We've been introduced to so many different superhero franchises over the years, some more and some less successful, but very few of them have won over my heart quite like the X-Men did. I love the X-Men. I truly love them. May 13th is the so-called X-Men Day, and even though I am a bit late because this video comes out on the 16th of May, I still decided to make a video ranking every single X-Men film, and trust me, I have a lot to say. Hello, my name is Freyr. I'm your favorite local forest grumman and a Polish sociology student. And welcome to my little corner of the internet where I discuss all forms of popular media that interest me, whether that's books, TV shows, films, or music. Today, we're going to be diving headfirst into the X-Men franchise and we're going to be ranking every single X-Men movie. I'm honestly very excited to do it. I really enjoyed my little marathon of rewatching all of these films for the most part. We'll get there. We're gonna get there. But it's been so fun to revisit these films because there's so much peak in these films that I completely forgot about. And it was so cool to just experience it again. Now, it is difficult to explain why exactly X-Men have always been my favorite superhero group out there. But I think it has a lot to do with the meaning behind them. Their stories heavily rely on the metaphor of mutants as marginalized groups. And of course, the X-Men are then a symbol of fight for equality against racism, just in general, bigotry, homophobia, transphobia, so on and so forth. Mutants are being singled out, vilified for something that is outside of their control, which is, of course, their genes. Life is hard for them, just like for many marginalized groups in our world. But these films, these stories, they carry the message of no mutant is a lonely island. There is always community you can find, support in places you might not think to look. And I think that is such a beautiful message. And also, I think it's a quite important and still, unfortunately, very relevant message, even in the year of 2026. I would say that's always been the number one reason for why I love these films so much. But I mean, the stories, the characters themselves, it's all just so peak. But before I get into ranking these movies, I would quickly like to remind you that you can always subscribe to the channel. Most of you watching are not subscribed, and if you want to see more content like this from me, that is the best way to show your support. You can also comment, share the video if you want to, and you can also follow me on all of my other social media, which are going to be listed in the description box below. Now, how this is going to work is we're going to go through all of these films in chronological order of release. And as we go along, we're going to be, filling the list. And also, if it wasn't obvious before, this video includes massive spoilers for all of these films, so you have been warned. That, of course, means that we're going to be starting in the year 2000 with the X-Men.
What do they call you? Wheels? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I mean, it's a classic. I love it. This film is kind of perfect. It is so close to being a perfect start for a franchise. It genuinely has it all. It has a stacked cast, incredible performances, a great story, very cool visuals in my opinion, and also iconic line delivery. This film follows the story of Rogue and Wolverine, who are two mutants who randomly encounter each other and their adventure as they end up at a private institute called the Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think there's anything I would really change about this film. I think it's perfect as it is. I think this plot is quite simple, but also it makes sense and it packs a punch. I think it's very well executed. I personally really enjoyed the subplot of the mutant phobic, I think his name was Senator Kelly, whose point of view kind of changes once Magneto, does stuff to him. See, maybe Magneto had a point there. When you put someone in the shoes of the person that they hate, they might start looking at things differently, which too bad that also destabilized the body of the senator. That scene genuinely is disturbing, even all these years later. It is so disgusting. I forgot how just wild that scene was. But still, Magneto kind of has a point. And that also makes him such a good villain because I agree with him, but just not quite in the methods of turning his views into reality, That is probably, I would say, my favorite type of villain because they actually make you think about the whole story, the whole situation. It's not just, oh, this person's bad, they want to destroy the world. No, they have a point. It's just their methods are way too out of control, way too aggressive. Also, shout out to Luke Castellan from Percy Jackson. He also fits into that category perfectly. I also kind of love that Rogue gets to be one of the main characters in this trilogy of films. I always really liked the character of Rogue, although I'm sad that they didn't give her the accent from the animated show. I really love that accent. I genuinely could like listen to her voice actress, I think her name is Lenore Zahn. She could read like the phone book to me and I would still find it interesting.
Well, your little pep talk went about as smooth as a dozen cats in a yarn store.
But getting to watch her journey is so cool. I think witnessing how the world treats mutants by literally going from the scene of Senator Kelly talking about mutant registration and how all of them could be dangerous to a scene of Rogue nearly killing her boyfriend because her mutation manifests for the first time is such a good narrative choice. So yeah, I do actually like her story, I will say, but I do understand why some people don't, because she's way younger than she was in the original comics, I think, and also in the show, because there she was just like a full-on part of the X-Men. Here she is one of the kids, one of the students, so it's a completely different relationships and a completely different arc. So I understand the frustration. I personally like it here because I think in this movie her arc is actually kind of good. Does it end well? No, it does not. But we're gonna talk about that a little later. This film probably has some of my favorite like superhero fight scenes of all time. That whole section in the Statue of Liberty is genuinely so peak. I also love that we get to see different fighting styles there, because you have like the Wolverine versus the Mystique, which, while we're on the topic of Mystique, let's just talk about Mystique. I love the character of Mystique. She doesn't really get to tell us a lot about herself in these films, but I still think she's incredible. However, I also did see a Letterboxd review that made me laugh a lot, which said something along the lines of Mystique's fighting style is to show her blue pussy to impress her opponent, and I think she might have inspired that clip from Bayonetta. If you know, you know. When it comes to the like visual effects of this film, they are definitely less flashy and over the top as the ones that we get in some later films, but I actually prefer that here. We don't get visuals of like Apocalypse reshaping Cairo or whatever, but sometimes simpler is better. I would say that scene at the train station is a great example of that, because it didn't really need many special effects, but just by that scene you can tell how powerful Charles and Eric are. When it comes to the performances, this film is just everything. Like, I'm sorry, I love this cast. I love Ian McKellen specifically, though. He is one of the greatest people to ever walk on the face of the earth, and I'm convinced of that. But I mean, my guy gets to be one of the coolest superhero villains in history, and also gets to play Gandalf. Like, what an absolutely iconic resume. When it comes to Hugh Jackman, I sometimes forget how good of an actor he actually is. I will say this film is definitely one of my favorites of him, you know, as Wolverine. There are some that are a little weaker, and we're gonna get there. But this is definitely one of the highlights for me. And also, like, he is Wolverine. I think that's just the testament of how good the role actually fits him. Like, I could not imagine anyone else as Wolverine. And I mean, also, this film gave us some iconic lines. One of my favorite Wolverine lines of the whole film is when he says to Charles, "What do they call you, Wheels? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." I honestly forgot that that line was even there. And then I was rewatching the film like last week, and I was like, oh my God, this is hilarious. But I mean, if we're talking about iconic quotes, we have to mention what happens to a toad that gets struck by lightning. The same thing that happens to everything else. Peak.
You know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
Storm in this film is perfect. I love her. Halle Berry's Storm is the best iteration of the character that we've had and that has ever been brought to screen, and I will die on that hill. In this film, aside from just like serving unprecedented levels of cunt, she doesn't really do much, but later films actually get to build her up more as a character, which I really, really love. And I think The Last Stand actually does that the best. Although that film, of course, has its own problems. To sum things up, I think this film is quite literally perfect. And I think it's one of the best films of the entire franchise. And I'm gonna place the original X-Men film in my 4th place.
What exactly are you professor of, Mr. Logan?
Art.
X2 or X-Men United is in my opinion, the best film of the original trilogy and easily one of the best X-Men films just in general. I don't think there is a single bad thing that I can say about it, aside from like my criticism that is reserved for the characters, but not necessarily for the way that they are written. Like, yeah, we have some really, really awful people here, but they are also very well written. This film picks up after the events of X-Men and focuses more on Wolverine and his past, which might be connected to a shady individual who's trying to eradicate mutants. I love the plot of this film and how it takes the theme of persecution that we see in the first film to a whole new level, because now we're not talking about forced registration or possible mutant threats. Now we're talking about just like annihilation. That is all, by the way, started by a guy whose son is also a mutant and who's been insanely abusive to said son. That scene where Professor X starts connecting the dots and Stryker tells him more never fails to just like bring chills down my spine. I think there are villains in this franchise that are more powerful or more threatening, but I don't think there's any villain in this franchise that is as cruel and just psychotic straight up as Stryker is. That man is terrifying, and he is just some guy. Like, he doesn't have powers. He doesn't really have anything that would make him a threat physically, but he is so hateful and abusive that like you're audibly scared of him. Sometimes just pure hate can be scary enough. This film is also very huge for Wolverine because here he wins me over on a completely new level. In the first film, his priority really, really quickly ends up being Rogue, but here we actually get to see him be even more of a hero. He's over there saving so many of these kids. And also, I just mentioned Letterboxd in the previous film section, but I also saw another review that really, really made me laugh for this specific film, which said something along the lines of, "Some kid, I'm sad and I'm a mutant, Wolverine, already filling out adoption papers." Like, that's how he's moving the entire film. And I just love to see it. I think exploring his past and getting to see him face his tormentors is just really, really interesting. And the final words that he says to Stryker hit hard. Whoever wrote that, snaps for you. You did your big one with that. This film also introduces my absolute favorite member of the X-Men, which is, of course, Nightcrawler. I adore Nightcrawler and I adore Kurt, and his introduction is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. He is truly one of my favorite characters ever. And I also really, really love his like little relationship with Storm specifically. They are such a cool duo. One of my favorite like underrated moments of this film is that scene where Magneto and Mystique are together just like queening out on the X-Jet and laughing at like others. That is so funny because they have the vibe of like shady drag queens in like the Untucked of RuPaul's Drag Race, and I just live for that. And typically I would say that I am a Magneto apologist, but here I would say I do think that he went a bit too far. Like, how are you gonna use your friend to eradicate a whole race and do exactly the same thing that Stryker just tried to do to you? Just reverted. Like, how about maybe we don't do that? On the other hand, the moment that I hate, even though I do think that it was very well written and very well made, is the visit at Bobby's house. That scene pisses the crap out of me because, like, fuck you mean, have you tried not being a mutant? What's that supposed to mean? That whole scene is where the film gets really dangerously close to reality, because this is literally like the type of question that a lot of queer people hear when they come out. And then you also get Bobby's stupid, ugly, irrelevant brother calling the cops on him because he knows he'll never be as cool as the fucking Iceman. I mean, I don't know if that's why he called the cops, but that's how I just interpret it. Like, he was just like, oh my God, my brother has cool ice powers and I'm a nobody and nobody likes me and nobody loves me. So I'm going to call the cops on him. And then I'm going to continue being a miserable brat afterwards. That's my vision of his brother. Like, I know an insecure dumbass when I see one, and he can rot in hell for that. His parents too. Like, I'm not excusing these people. They were also awful in that scene. That whole section raises my blood pressure in a way that few other films have ever managed to do so. But yeah, I think that this film is quite literally perfect. It has no flaws. And if you disagree, I don't care. Now, controversial, maybe, potentially for some people. But I just said that this is the best film of the original trilogy. And I also think that this is just, in general, the best film of the franchise. Like, I'm sorry, there's no beating X2. There are a few films that came very, very close. But there are like small little things sprinkled in them that that are keeping me from giving them the number one spot. There is nothing in X2. This is just the best film of the franchise.
Don't you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
Well, and there I was praising these films, and we get to The Last Stand, and it is pretty bad. It is not very good. Quite underwhelming, actually. This film follows the X-Men as they have to navigate their lives after the cue for the mutation gets introduced. And at the same time, Jean Grey returns in mysterious circumstances with even stronger powers that seem to be getting out of control. This film is kind of a culmination of some of the small mistakes that are made throughout the first two films. And I am saying that specifically in regards to Cyclops and Jean. They don't get much to do in the first two films, really, aside from like Jean dying. They're very surface level characters. All we know about Cyclops is that he is the second hand of the professor and that he really loves Jean and kind of dislikes Wolverine. That's all we get. Jean, on the other hand, loves Cyclops, is kind of friendly, but also we don't really know what the whole thing with Logan is. And she also has some powers that she cannot quite explain. And then she just dies, and that's it. Compared to the other X-Men characters, these two don't get nearly as much to work with. Because like how Nightcrawler, the character that is only in one of these films, which by the way, I am upset about. I wish that he was here. Maybe he could have saved this train wreck. But either way, he is just in one film, and he's still way more developed than Jean and Scott. How does that make sense? This leads to many problems with this film, specifically when it comes to Cyclops, because he gets done so dirty, it's crazy. The way he dies off screen is actually disrespectful. Like, rest in peace, Scott Summers. We barely knew you.
I am sick. I am sick of your shit. And when I'm not sick, I'm tired. I am sick and tired.
Meanwhile, Jean gets this whole arc about the Phoenix taking over and her not controlling her powers and killing people, trying to seduce Logan, so on and so forth. But at least, you know, we get to actually learn a bit about her. We get to learn about, for example, her family or like what Charles did to her. But Cyclops doesn't even get that. He gets no backstory in these films, no interesting relationships, no interesting character arcs, nothing, just nothing on top of nothing. And also, what a waste, because I genuinely believe that James Marsden is such a perfect casting choice for Cyclops, and I think he is the best version of the character. But he gets completely wasted in this trilogy. And don't even get me started on the fact that this guy doesn't even receive a funeral. They just skip over the fact that he died. Like, actually, we need to go back into that writing room and just redo the whole movie at this point. When it comes to the actual plot of this film, I believe that they tried to cram way too much into a way too short runtime. I think it honestly would have been way better if you just split it into two parts. Like, first we go for like the Phoenix route, and then we go for like the cure for mutation, or the other way around. It doesn't really matter. But the fact that we're doing these two massive plots at the same time leaves it so both of them end up being underdeveloped. That's why I actually, on paper, really like the idea of the Dark Phoenix as a film, because it focuses almost fully on Jean and the Phoenix. I would really like to see like a separate film about the cure for mutation, because I think there's so many implications. There's so much to explore here, and it just doesn't get explored here because we don't have enough runtime for that. I also have a massive problem with the way that Rogue gets handled in this film. There is a debate to be had about the ending that she actually ends up getting, because she, well, to spoil it all, she takes the cure. she cures herself of her mutation. I believe that in the animated show, and like, don't quote me on that because it's been like a year since I watched it, so maybe I'm misremembering, but I do think that there was an episode, or maybe even two, where Rogue actually tackled the idea of like getting rid of her powers, but eventually she didn't. Meanwhile, in this film, she actually does. And I'm sorry, I think this is a massive issue for me. You spent this entire movie establishing that there's nothing wrong with mutants and that they should love who they are. You know, you have Storm giving several speeches at that point about like how there's nothing wrong with mutants and how we should stand up for each other and like stuff like that. Then you also have like Angel and his arc about finally accepting his mutation by cutting off the people who made him feel worse because of it. Meanwhile, Rogue, yeah, I get that she is a special case because her powers like actively are a hindrance on her life, but at the same time, is this really the message that you want to send? The message here is that if you're different from others and that difference is kind of, you know, inconvenience for you, just get get rid of it. Just throw it away. What?
And the madness.
Like, I'm sorry, I hate it. I think it was somewhere on Reddit. I don't know if I saved it, but I saw somebody talking about this whole plot point and comparing it to how conversion therapy exists and how people believe that you can like cure the gay, even though in fact you cannot. And the only way to go about it is to just like accept yourself fully and love yourself, all of the elements of yourself, regardless of how they get received by the rest of society. I think that comparison might go a bit far here, but I definitely see that point, and I hate that this is the ending that Rogue gets, especially that she kind of does it for a guy. Like, Wolverine asks her whether her decision is like related to her relationship with Bobby, and she says, no, I'm doing this for myself. But then like she ends up with Bobby either way. Mind you, Bobby, if I'm not misremembering, I think in the comics he's gay. So what, you're ditching your powers for a lavender marriage? Is that what you're doing? Another thing I unfortunately very dislike in this film is Magneto. He is always correct for the most part. Again, the cure is not something that's going to be voluntary. It will be used as a weapon in the hands of discrimination. And the cause that he was fighting for actually makes sense. He wanted to remove the cure from like the wrong hands, and it was the correct play, even though the fact that he wanted to do so by killing the boy who like helped create the cure or like was the source of the cure is kind of insane. But then we get to the parts that genuinely pissed me off. How the fuck did Phoenix disintegrate Xavier in front of Magneto's eyes? And he was just like, oh, come here, sweetheart. Let's start a rebellion together. Like, she just disintegrated your husband, Eric. And you're just over like, oh, Pookie, it's okay. Like, what is going on? And also the way that he treated Mystique. That moment is cruel. Like, give me a gun. Mystique deserved better. Magneto lost me there, not gonna lie. I like the fact that we get to see Iceman, Kitty, and also Colossus here, but I also think that they do get underutilized. I also quite dislike this version of Juggernaut, but that might be a controversial opinion. Now, as for the things that I love, I already mentioned Angel. I think him getting his own little arc in this film about self-acceptance is really cool, especially since like he is a very secondary character to the story. That scene of him as a child is so heartbreaking, but then, you know, he grows into a strong mutant, and it is his mutation that is the only reason why his father is still alive by the end of the events of this film. I like that. I think it's quite poetic. Turns out being so different from the rest of society isn't that bad after all. Or is it? I don't know. Let's ask Rogue. Like, that's so crazy to me. Like, you have Angel over here getting this arc of self-acceptance, and then you're gonna give... No. I also quite enjoyed Storm in this film. Her stepping into like the leader role and leading the school, constantly fighting for her students was just wonderful to see. I really love her in this film, and I also really enjoyed the Beast here. He was probably the closest to the Beast from the animated show, really, and I love it. I think this is the best version of that character in the films. I think the effects in this film are actually quite good, although there are a few moments that feel slightly ridiculous, like Magneto fully kidnapping a bridge is just very, very funny to me. Like, he just kidnapped a whole ass bridge. That's how you know he cannot be straight, because the level of drama in this guy, like, straight people could never. Another thing that was very funny to me was when Jean used her powers to take off Logan's belts. Because, like, I mean, sure. The Last Stand is gonna be placed in my 9th place. It might be a bit high for some of you, but trust me, when we talk about the next few films, you're gonna understand why it's there.
Your country needs you. I'm Canadian.
First things first, what the fuck is will.i.am doing in this film? And also, Ryan Reynolds, that is not Deadpool. Not to me. Like, who is that? This film takes us on a journey to the past of Wolverine. We get to see how he found out that he was a mutant, and also what happened after. We also see what led to him getting, you know, the metal claws and skeleton that we know him for. X-Men Origins Wolverine is very middling at first, but then it only gets worse. I have so many questions about what the hell was even the vision here, because first of all, what the hell is this like Deadpool variant with no mouth? What is that meant to be? Just like, how the hell did we get there? Where did the idea of like amnesia bullets come from? How was that a thing? Where does that idea originate from? Why did Kevin Durant get put in a fat suit? That's another question. How do Wade's swords work? Because they are too long to fit into his arms. So like, how does he just hide them there? And also, what the hell is Cyclops doing in this film? Because this takes place before the events of the X-Men. So he would have likely recognized Logan, but he doesn't. So what? There's just too many holes in logic here, man. And I also think that the entire idea of how they managed to get Logan to agree for the experiments, to the experiments, is fucking stupid. Like, I'm sorry. Every plot point in this film is dumb as shit. I mean, as for the things that like didn't change, Stryker still remains the most cruel villain of the franchise. Like, fuck that guy for real. Even though in this film he's less imposing because he's just not really written that well. This film also brings us our first live action version of Gambit. I don't dislike him, which is something. I would actually say that he is a bit underutilized here. Gambit is my second favorite X-Men character right after Nightcrawler. And whilst this take isn't like perfect, I also think that it isn't actively horrible, unlike a certain other one. Also, apparently Channing Tatum's version of the character is well liked by fans. What fans? Do you guys seriously enjoy that? That version specifically is like a joke to me. I don't treat that as canon. That is not canon to me. Oh, and also, I forgot to mention that in the intro, I will not be including the Deadpool films because I know that they are closely related to the X-Men, but I also like don't want to. I never liked them. I never liked the Deadpool films. I thought that all of them were pretty mid. The first one was probably the best one, but still, like, I don't get these films. They're just not for me. I don't really want to talk about them. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but I just don't want to. So I don't care. One thing that I will say that made me laugh a lot was Victor just skipping around like a fucking rabbit. Like, that's a grown-ass man behaving like those people on TikTok who like are pretending to be wolves. Which, listen, do what makes you happy. I really could not care less. If you want to pretend that you're a wolf, go and do that. But when you have this like grown, huge man in this like black coat doing that at the top of like some like water thing, I don't know where he was doing that, what the place called is, but that is just a very funny visual. Like, he's over there just like hopping towards this Deadpool from Temu. The only plot point in this film that I actually did care about was the older couple that Logan visits for a moment, because they really deserved better. They are sweet, lovely people. They help a stranger, and this is the fate that they get. There's like, man, that is truly the most heartbreaking part of this story. X-Men Origins Wolverine is gonna land in my 10th spot, and actually, yeah, I don't think I have much to say about it. I really hated this film. The more it continued, the more bored I got. I just don't want to talk about it anymore, so I'm just gonna move on.
Excuse me, I'm Eric Lensher.
Charles Xavier.
Go fuck yourself.
The gayest movie in existence. And we stand. This film follows the story of young Charles Xavier and Eric Lensher. The world is finding out about mutants in real time, and Charles becomes the leader of a team of mutants that is set to, go on a mission to stop a nuclear war from starting between the US and Russia. I love First Class. I really love it. I think it's one of my favorites from the newer timelines, and I really enjoy it. There's so much to love here. There are so many fun characters that finally get to hit the screens for the first time. We get to see Havoc for the first time. Banshee makes a debut. Emma Frost finally makes it onto our screens in a way that is flattering, because I refuse to accept that version from X-Men Origins Wolverine. That was not it. Why did she kind of look like Doja Cat on the one red carpet? I would say that the new versions of the characters that we've grown to love for so many years are pretty much really good. I love the new castings, although from what I've seen, the Mystique casting is one that people seem to be divided on. I will be bold here. Whilst Rebecca Romijn's version is obviously superior just because of the amount of cunt that she served in this role, I actually think Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique is a great choice. She eats this role, especially since this version of Mystique is written to be actually more than just a mother. She is a mother with emotional depth and actually gets interesting arcs in the films that she's a part of. I mean, aside from the last one, but more on that later. Her journey of self-acceptance and fighting for the mutant cause is genuinely cool to see, and I think establishing her as almost like a sister figure to Charles was such a smart move. I love the dynamics in this group because you get Charles and his sister, you get Charles and his boyfriend, Charles and his first students, Charles and the woman that we were supposed to believe that he's in love with. Love. Getting to see them grow together, form a team together, work together. I just adore it. This almost feels like it's approaching that found family trope that I really love whenever it shows up in media. Also, I'm sorry, this version of Magneto, it's down. Michael Fassbender, you are everything in this role. Really such a worthy successor to Ian McKellen. I think this is perfect. Seeing more of Eric's past and what led him down the path to becoming Magneto was great, although I will say that the flashback scene of younger him was traumatizing. This was just a kid. I also think Nicholas Hoult did a great job as Beast. The effects on his feet are kind of disgusting. That is grotesque. I cannot imagine living like that, but I thought that Nicholas actually did the role justice with his performance. The fight scenes, in my opinion, are cool as hell. The aesthetic of this film is just peak. That scene with Magneto moving that huge, I think you call it a radio dish. Cinema. And also when Charles says to him that there's so much more to you than, they are husbands. That whole scene at the beach is genuinely life-changing. I'm not the same person as I was when I first saw it. It changed my brain chemistry forever. I will say though, there are two things that this film did wrong. The first one was to introduce Darwin. So Darwin is the only black protagonist, mind you, with the power to adapt to survive. He can survive anything. Well, it was a mistake. And why, you might ask? Well, because the guy whose power is to survive anything gets killed first. At that point, why even introduce him? It makes his powers look lame as hell, not to mention that he is the only protagonist of color. So this is just a bad look altogether. And the second bad thing this film did is probably quite obvious. I mean, I think if you watch this video far enough, you know what I'm gonna say. I'm just gonna put it on screen so you can all admire whatever that was. Okay, are we done? Okay, yeah. Whoever did this, jail. Actually, now that I'm listing the things that I dislike about this film, there's one more that kind of sticks out to me, and that is the handling of Emma Frost, because she gets this cool ending scene where Magneto frees her from her prison and she joins him and stuff, and that would almost hint at her being a bigger part of the next film. But then by the time we get to Days of Future Past, she's just pronounced dead. She's just not there. So that kind of disrespectful because I actually wanted to see more of her. Anyway, this is an iconic piece of gay cinema and I think it deserves more appreciation. X-Men First Class is gonna land itself in my 5th place.
You look nice.
I feel violated.
The Wolverine. To me, this is not an X-Men film, but I think it is still considered a part of the series, apparently. But to me, it is so far removed from what we've previously done that is just hilarious, actually. Like, I think it's meant to be a continuation of The Last Stand, and I think it is meant to also set up some events of like Days of Future Past. But the tone of this film is so completely different. It feels like it almost doesn't belong to this franchise, really. This film follows Wolverine as he goes on a trip to Japan. And he does so because a guy whose life he once saved wants to thank him for that. But Japanese mafia is doing something and the whole family has some like dark secrets, and this is just basically Kill Bill, but like make it Wolverine. That's literally what this is. This film is dumb as shit and also just so boring. I phased out of it like 30 minutes before the ending. Like the entirety of the third act, I was just watching it with like one eye closed. Really. Well, no, that's a really weird visual actually. Now, like I wasn't really paying that much attention to it because I was just so bored. That final twist is one of the worst twists I've ever seen. Also, you watch this movie for 10 minutes and you already know what's going to happen. Like, this was so predictable. There are also some very confusing character choices, very weird plot points, boring dialogue, questionable ideas. Just like, if I wanted to watch the tales of rich family members that are like trying to kill each other, I'd just watch Murder Mystery with Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler. Not this. The fight scenes though are impressive. The choreography in them is good. Like, I give 10s when 10s are due. I think the choreography in fights here is really, really top tier. The rest sucks. I had no interest in any of these characters except for like the girl in the red hair. I forgot what her name was, but she was kind of cool. Viper was an interesting like villain, I guess, but she was also kind of weird. Like that scene where she was just like dramatically taking her wig off was very funny to me. Yashida was such a boring, stupid villain. Really, just maybe you really should have died in that funeral that we see in like the 20th minute. Like maybe you should have just stayed there actually. That would have been better. Because like the moment he popped up, my eyes performed like the biggest eye roll known to humanity. But the real problem of this film to me is, what am I supposed to take away from this? That Japanese mafia is bad? That corporations are bad? Like, what is the message here? Every X-Men film has something to say. It has some sort of message. And this one just doesn't. There's nothing to analyze. There's no themes. Nothing. It's just crap. It's just bullshit. It's just a waste of time. I didn't see anything that would be like a theme, a message, something that I could think about more. Although that also might be because I wasn't paying attention the entirety of the third act. I was just watching it phased out, really. Yeah, no, this film is trash. It is stinky butt cheeks, and I'm gonna place it last. I think this is the worst X-Men film out there, and it is really, really bad. Do not watch it. If you haven't seen this film, do not watch it. Do not do it to yourself. It's such a waste of time. I gave it like 1.5 stars on Letterboxd, which is pretty bad for me. There are only few films that I give less than that because I'm typically very like optimistic with my ratings, but this one was just so boring.
You're on acid. Somebody gave you really bad acid.
Now we move on to X-Men Days of Future Past, and I will say that this film is actually one that I didn't remember that much, and I also didn't really remember liking it at all when I first watched it, but damn it, it hit me on my rewatch. I oftentimes dislike time travel films because it seems that some people don't know how to write time travel properly, and then they get into a lot of trouble because their films stop making sense. That also applies to shows because the example that I was thinking about specifically was the CW's Flash. Overall, the show is fun in its first 3 seasons, but these writers, they are completely clueless about the rules that they themselves have set for this world, and they continuously break them, introduce new ones, and they keep contradicting each other to the point that I don't even know what the lore of the show is. I don't know what rules are there in this show, or if there are any, and it's just all a big mess. But here, actually, I will say that this was a smart choice for me. Sending someone into the mind of their past self is, in my opinion, a great idea. I think the rules they set are simple and they work. Even though I still don't know why can Kitty do that? Like, when did that power manifest? Like, when did she first try this on somebody? When did she realize she could do this? This whole time I was just thinking that this is just the X-Men character that can just like walk through walls and that's it. Turns out no. Actually, I guess. Also forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about Kitty that I think Elliot Page actually does a great job with this character. Days of Future Past shows us a future where basically humanity is like at the brink of extinction and mutants are getting hunted by these robots called the Sentinels. So our team makes up this plan to return to the past to stop the invention of the Sentinels, specifically which happened because Mystique tried to kill somebody. This film is actually cool as hell. It's genuinely awesome as fuck. You get insane sequences from Quicksilver. You have Mystique at her prime when she chokes a guy with her foot. That was crazy. Charles is at his lowest and just sucks ass again. And that I actually love because he gets actual massive flaws to his character and he has to work through them. We get to see Magneto transporting an entire stadium to create his own Hunger Games arena, which that was kind of sick. I will say that was still a smarter choice than him transporting a bridge. Oh, and don't even get me started on that scene like in the future when you have Magneto and Professor X talking about how they wasted their time fighting each other. Yeah. Oh man, that hit like a truck. Like, and that scene on the plane also, Jesus Christ. Visually, this film is gorgeous, from the action sequences to how bleak the future looks like. But also, you get the warmer, more colorful look of the room where Logan gets transported back in time, which I also love. Like, it's the only warm place in that entire world. It's the last beacon of hope because it actually is. It is their last chance to fix everything. The story of it is honestly quite good. I like presenting the idea of violence, igniting violence, and it being a domino effect in the context of time travel. And also, I like the fact that the solution to the problem is not that easy. It's not just kill Trask. No, it's A, prove that he ain't shit and that he can do shit, and B, prove that mutants can actually be good. It's smart, but it also feels like we're actively playing 3D chess and we have to make moves that we are not really sure whether they're gonna work or not and how they're gonna, fare out in the context of time. This film is intellectual, actually. It's visually stunning. Also, it's perfect for nostalgia baiting. Like, what else would I need? And also, Quicksilver steals the show, as always. Like, that scene in the Pentagon is just everything. The one thing I kind of disliked about this film, though, is that some of the characters from First Class get killed off screen, which, I mean, most of them weren't that well developed, but I wanted to see them get something more to work with, and they just kind of don't. Specifically Azazel, Banshee, but also Emma. Emma is the Huntress Supreme of these films. Like, the fact that she is gone now makes me really sad. But at least the reason that they are gone actually makes sense, and it is used as a narrative device. It actually drives the plot somewhere, which I actually appreciate. I also love that it's Logan now that has to save the day by leading the young Professor X down the right path. It shows so much growth from the first few films, and I just really love to see it. I love seeing how he's changed as a person. I will say though, the time and space continuum in this film kind of doesn't make sense. Like, it loops around almost perfectly, but then you start noticing like little problems with it. And yeah. Like, Jean and Scott are alive in that ending, despite the fact that Jean died in both timelines and Scott died in one of them. But yet, here they are. They just survive until that day, and Kitty is shown to be one of the teachers at school, meaning that she's already old enough to be a teacher, meaning that this takes place like years after The Last Stand. But then again, Jean and Cyclops are here. And also, Rogue still doesn't have her powers, meaning that the whole thing with the cure happened. So did the timeline change affect the events around the Phoenix? Because, like, I don't understand, but also why? The more I think about it, the less it makes sense. And I honestly think that the writers just really wanted to get this like cameo of the original cast and just nostalgia bait us basically. And it didn't really, it wasn't really ever meant to make sense, which I guess is fine, honestly. Like, this is the kind of nostalgia baiting that I actually enjoy. Like, yeah, reunite the old cast. Give me a small, little, very sweet moment with them. I actually really, really enjoyed that. X-Men Days of Future Past is gonna land itself in my third place. I really, really like this movie. I was surprised just by how much I liked it on my rewatch. And I'm gonna be honest, this is probably one of the best films in the franchise. This is just so good.
I think that was probably my favorite tree.
We move on to X-Men Apocalypse, and I will say that I really remember liking this film when I was younger, but every time I revisit it, there are more things that stick out to me that could have easily been fixed to make it better. Like, I have a full list. This film introduces the character of Apocalypse, an all-powerful mutant who just decides to basically wipe the earth from humans and let the strongest, aka mutants, rule it. And our team, of course, has to stop him. First, let's start things off with the things that I do like, which is the new additions to the cast. I actually kind of enjoyed this version of Scott, even though he's kind of useless. I also enjoyed the new Jean, played by Sophie Turner. I think she is very fun. And I also really, really love this version of Nightcrawler. I think both versions of Nightcrawler in the X-Men films are just perfect. This one is just as good as the original for me. Like, he is just a baby. I feel maternal instincts towards this guy. Like, genuinely, I will protect him. He is so precious. I also think giving an origin story to Storm was a very fun idea, and I actually don't mind it. I also enjoyed seeing Psylocke for the first time. We get a new cool version of Angel, who is also very fun. And I think when it comes to like the special effects, the CGI of it all, this film looks very, very polished. That whole mess they make in Cairo, that pyramid, the destruction, all their powers, it all looks very, very good. I also enjoyed the fact that Mystique gets even more character development because now she's seen as a hero to so many young mutants, and she finally embraces that and becomes a leader. The Sweet Dreams sequence is just, man, like, there's cinema before the Sweet Dreams sequence with Quicksilver saving everybody, and there's cinema after. Like, that was a monumental moment in history. Oh, and Magneto speaking Polish was also very fun. Honestly, I think aside from Eric, every other Polish speaker in this film is actually Polish. Like, they sounded like native speakers to me. So him speaking Polish was not quite as good, but I appreciate that he tried, and I think he still sounds better than Charlie XCX. It was fun to hear my own language in a superhero film, so I appreciate it on that front. Apocalypse as a villain. It's okay. I typically don't enjoy villains like these. He's basically the Thanos of the X-Men franchise, and I find that kind of boring. I will say though, I love the fact that they said that in the film that when he launched all these nukes into the sky to destroy them, that they weren't necessarily sure whether that was an act of war or like peace, because technically, I don't know about you guys, but like, I would rather not live in a world with nuclear weapons in it. So in that sense, I think Apocalypse was doing all of us a favor. Also, call me stupid, but I did not realize that Apocalypse was played by Oscar Isaac, because, well, I mean, there is a reason for that. Oscar Isaac, one of the most beautiful men to ever walk on this planet, gets buried underneath like tons of makeup, prosthetics, whatnot, and turned into this blue, ugly mummy. And like, how was I supposed to know that that was Oscar Isaac? And also, speaking of blue, why is it a thing that every mutant that doesn't have like a regular skin color in these films is blue? Why is that a thing? Every single one of them is blue. Is that just a coincidence? Now, time for the list of things that I didn't like about this movie. First of all, what is Moira McTaggart doing here? In First Class, she was okay. I kind of understood her purpose, even though I was bored. I didn't really care about her that much. Here, though, she does nothing. She's just literally an oxygen-stealing prop. Her only purpose is to remind us that Charles supposedly isn't gay, which also isn't true. He is, to me. Hot take, maybe, but I would have replaced her with Jubilee because she went on that school trip with Scott, Jean, and Nightcrawler, and then she just kind of gets left behind. I actually would have liked to have seen Jubilee actually do something in these films because she appears here and it's very, very cool to see her, but like, that's just a cameo, really. I also hated that Quicksilver didn't tell Magneto that he was his dad. Like, actually hated that scene. Pisses me off so much. Just say it. Just say it. Just tell him. It would add so much to the story. So much stakes would be added. Just do it. And the fact that they don't even discuss it afterwards, he just never finds out. Magneto never finds out that Quicksilver is his son. Because in Dark Phoenix, they also don't talk about it. So what is the point of even introducing that story then if you're not gonna resolve it? And especially in a film that randomly introduces Magneto's wife and daughter, and his entire motivation in this film is to get revenge because they get killed. So imagine how much of world-changing news it would be for him if he found out that he actually has a son. Also, who the hell is his daughter? Like, is that a character from the books? Because I've never heard of her. She is a mutant that, if I'm not mistaken, can like control animals. Is that a thing in the comics? Because I honestly don't remember that being a thing, but maybe I'm misremembering. Another thing, at the end of Days of Future Past, Mystique, disguised as Stryker, fishes out Wolverine. But here we find out that Wolverine has actually been held captive by Stryker and has already, been experimented on. So how did that happen? Did Mystique just give him up? I don't think she did. Not this kind of Mystique. So how does that make sense? These are the three main things I would point out, but they make a huge difference if actually applied. And I would like to see, an alternative film that actually would do that. Overall, I think that this film is quite mid when compared to the others. It has great parts. It also has bad parts. X-Men Apocalypse is gonna land in my 6th place.
Logan, just stop. I have to pee.
Most superhero films can be chalked down to a few things. Characters in flashy, over-the-top costumes who shoot like beams at villains and defeat them, whilst also almost decimating entire cities or countries. There are a few superhero films, though, that kinda do more than that go below the surface level when it comes to the emotional content, that hit you harder and that stay with you for days. I think a lot of the X-Men films kind of do that, but there are some other films that are incredible when it comes to that extent. I think of the latest installment of Superman as one of those films because of how poignant and current its message was. Or even Spider-Man No Way Home, that was also a good example of that. But all of them pale in comparison to Logan. This film follows the story of old Wolverine as he takes care of an even older Professor X and suddenly finds out that he has a daughter that needs to be protected from certain messed up individuals. At first I was confused a lot actually, but the longer that this film went on, the more invested I got and the more emotional it made me. The story of those kids running away and also Logan's long-lost daughter finally being protected by her father is just so good. And the amount of Professor X we also get in this film is just perfect. He broke my heart several times in this film. The concept of him being older and not quite able to control his powers anymore is, I think, super interesting and also very well executed. And seeing him break down was just... I think this is the best Professor X film also. This is the best portrayal of him. He is just... oh my god. This story just takes your heart and then twists it so many times. It is very well written in my opinion, but also just stays with you. I've been thinking about this film ever since I saw it, and it left such an impression on me. Specifically the story of those kids and how mutation went from something society feared to something that they decided to get rid of, to now something that they are engineering fully just themselves. Kind of blew me away, but also the theme of Xavier's Institute and the X-Men who used to care for young mutants now coming back, and Professor X trying to remind Logan who he once was and what his mission should be. Damn it, this film is a tearjerker, okay? Seeing Logan finally warm up to Laura was so beautiful. And also, I am of the opinion that he suffered more than Jesus Christ himself, because Jesus Christ, especially in this film, just in this film alone, he suffered so much. Seeing him weaker, unlike in many of the previous films where he could just heal himself basically at all times, with the exception of the previous Wolverine film, but we don't mention that. It's very interesting to me because he was kind of unstoppable, unkillable, but here we actually get to see him risking his life in a way he's never done before because he knows he's weak. He knows that this is going to kill him. But still, he chooses to protect these kids. He chooses to sacrifice himself for Laura, for these kids. And it makes it all so much more impactful. Oh, and also, another family got killed just for being nice to Logan and his companions. So first we get the old couple. Now we get them. Damn it. The acting, though, brings this story to life so well. Young Daphne Keane as Laura is phenomenal. She worked with Hugh Jackman so well. And speaking of him, I think this is actually one of my favorite performances of his. He is definitely a highlight of this film. And I'm just going to mention this because I think like I have to. I'm very excited to see Daphne Keane as Artemis in Percy Jackson Season 3. I am so excited for that. This film also had some really, really well executed fight scenes. I'd say some of the best in the franchise. They were so brutal, but also unlike anything I've seen before in this, just like in these films. I love Logan. Actually, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to put this in my second place. I think this is one of the best films of the franchise. It genuinely has so much going for it. It has so many messages to it. It's just, I love this film, man. I love it.
The women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
We move on to X-Men: The Dark Phoenix. This film is, well, I remember disliking a lot when I first saw it, and I still don't think it's perfect, but I also don't think the hate for this film is like fully justifies. Because for starters, it actually gives us a interesting look at Phoenix. Is she as cunty as the original one? No, you cannot outdo the doer, but at least we get to see more of Jean's mind, her thought process, her backstory, what Charles exactly did to her, and what exactly he, tried to protect her from. I like that, and I also like the fact that they are developing the lore of the Phoenix more accurately to the show or like the comics. Even though there are some silly choices that they make with her, like the fact that several people get close to her and start talking and she just explodes. Like the way that's how Mystique dies, and that's such an avoidable death. That is probably one of the most underwhelming character deaths I've ever seen. It actually looks comedic. Oh, and also this is the worst iteration of Mystique when it comes to the look. Not acting-wise, because Jennifer is always great acting-wise. But this look is horrible. They choose different shades of blue for her, basically every single film. But this is the worst one because she just looks like she's about to give the Smurfs a poignant speech. Not like she's about to, I don't know, show us why she's the fiercest character in all of superhero television. Like, this is not my mistake. Why does she look like that? And also she's wearing that ugly yellow suits. X-Men suits used to be considered the pinnacle of fashion by some, specifically by me. Not these though, because these look like they were bought off of Shein or Temu. The film itself is cool in places. I think it looks good. I actually like the way that it makes Charles a complete ass. Like, I mean, it's not the first film in this timeline to really hone in on the fact that Charles is not a perfect person. But Dark Phoenix specifically shows so much of his like egoistic assholeness, and I actually really like that. I think The Last Stand specifically didn't do that enough. And also, like, I love the character of Professor X, obviously, but it's clear that he mishandled Jean, and in The Last Stand, he dies for it, so he kind of gets off easy, which is a weird thing to say, I guess, but here he actually has to fix that mistake, and he has to learn from it, and that I do enjoy. I do, however, think that a lot of the characters in this film are very one-dimensional, like, especially when compared to the earlier installments in the series. Scott specifically is just in one mode the entire time. You have Storm that barely even gets featured at all. Magneto is off just like killing again, and this time, weirdly enough, I do not agree with him. And Quicksilver is not even in this. Like, he gets hurt once and he's just gone. And we don't see him again. And that made the film significantly worse. I mean, at least Nightcrawler is here and he is, as always, perfect and he can do no wrong in my eyes. I also don't know how I feel about like the added conflict of the aliens. That's kind of random. I get why, because of like the Phoenix, but also just I feel like if we would remove them from the equation, not much would change. They're not that interesting, and I think that their whole story greatly overshadows what I would prefer to be the actual film of this film, which is how easy it is to lose the support of a dominant group when you are a part of an oppressed minority. That is the theme of this film for me, yet it kind of goes away after Mystique's death. Like, it just goes away. And to me, it is way more important than aliens. So yeah, I do enjoy the ingredients that they are cooking with, but I don't exactly like what they cooked up. It's not actively horrible, right? But it's also not great. It's just meh. Dark Phoenix lands itself in my 8th place, right above The Last Stand. I think these two should be up there together, definitely.
It's my take. So am I.
The last film in chronological order from the X-Men universe is, of course, The New Mutants. And fun fact, I have not seen this film before. I watched it fully for this video for the first time. And I mean, beforehand, I read a few like non-spoiler reviews to see what the general consensus around this film was, to see whether I would agree or not. I have mixed feelings. I don't think that this film is actually that bad. Sue me. I know a lot of people really, really dislike this film. But to me, when you get films like the first 2 Wolverine films or The Last Stand or Dark Phoenix, this one at least manages to be interesting. This film follows Dani, a young mutant, as she lands in a facility meant to rehabilitate young mutants that pose a danger to society or themselves. But there is something sinister going on in the facility, and there are like dark forces at play, and they are tied closer to Dani than she previously would have thought. This film has a lot of very cool ideas. A psych ward for mutants is already just like a very interesting concept, and we get to see the themes of like religious trauma, survivor's guilt, childhood traumas, and also racism, although that one is probably the worst executed one because it genuinely just consists of Illyana being racist to Dani, and then by the end of the movie they're like gal pals. They're like, oh my god, we're friends. So it doesn't really get explored that much. But the rest are pretty interesting, especially since all of these traumas actually come to life in this film. All our characters have to face their fears, their demons from the past that are actually like brought to reality. That includes the priest that hurt Renee. You have the girlfriend of Roberto that he accidentally killed. You have Eliana's smiling men. That one was weird, but we're gonna get into that more in a second. The almost like horror feel of this movie is also, in my opinion, a very nice direction to go in, even though I don't think it gets executed to perfection. The issue of this film to me is how flat the writing and also the plot arcs of these characters fall sometimes. That villain specifically is genuinely so predictable, but also just not interesting, not threatening whatsoever. After she gets fully exposed as the villain of the film, she just gets eaten. Literally, she says, hello, I'm the bad guy. I'm gonna kill, Dani or whatever. And she just gets yeeted and eaten. And that's it. She's just gone. Nothing. Very underwhelming villain. Really, really underwhelming. As for the characters, I will say that I like them all pretty much. They are quite cool, but some of their backstories are really not well developed in my opinion. Illyana specifically is a victim of this. She is a character from the comics known as Magic, but her backstory just doesn't really make sense in the film. Like, who were these people tormenting her? Why were they doing that? And also, what do you mean that she just created the limbo by thinking about it a lot? How does that make sense? Her powers aren't like really that well established, but I also don't think that that was a possibility of her just like creating limbo. I am aware of the fact that in the comics, Illyana is a mutant who was raised in limbo, which is meant to be this like demonic dimension, but they don't mention that here. I'm assuming that the smiling men that she's like so afraid of are meant to be demons, but they come off as just like Slender Man knockoffs. And also, once you see them, they're just not that effective. And also, I completely don't understand the lore of Lockhead, because he's just a puppet for the most part, and then he suddenly turns into a little real dragon. So How is that possible? Although he is cute, so maybe I shouldn't be that mad about that. He is very cute. I like Logan. On the other hand, I do think that Dani is a very cool character, and she has easily some of the coolest powers in the entirety of the franchise. And I also like the fact that the queer coding in this film actually ends up being canon. You have like Dani and Renee, of course. We stan. You go, lesbians. You go. I also really enjoyed Charlie Keaton as Sam. It's refreshing to see him in something where he actually gets to do stuff, unlike Stranger Things. I think this film was honestly very enjoyable, even though like some of the effects look kind of weird, like the flames on Roberto or like the demon bear, they look kind of funny to me, but the film was cool. It could have been better. It definitely could have been better, don't get me wrong. But also don't think that it's that bad as you guys are making it out to be. This is definitely not worse than X-Men Origins Wolverine or The Wolverine. It really isn't. And I'm going to place it in my 7th place. And with that, my ranking is now completed. It is going to be on the screen for you to look at it once more. If you disagree, tell me in the comments. Please don't yell at me though. I'm very emotional. I don't like to get yelled at. But yeah, it was a really fun time, talking about these movies. But I also just want to quickly mention, because it seems that we are entering a new era for the X-Men, because they are now officially going to be a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I have a few thoughts about that. This move has, of course, begun a while back now, because they had like a few cameos here and there. But now I believe that it is confirmed that they're going to play a big role in Avengers Doomsday. And there's going to be a whole new X-Men film after that, which apparently is supposed to be like a reboot of the franchise, which I have mixed feelings on. How many times can you tell the same story? Like at this point, maybe we could tell something new. However, if this time it would like follow the plot of the show closer, for example, I would actually be very interested to see like a live action take on that. There are also some very interesting names attached to that project. Specifically, I remember seeing the names of the writers of Beef and The Bear. So that could be interesting. I'm honestly kind of excited to see what it turns out to be like. I am very much ready for an X-Men Renaissance. That kind of happened a while back when X-Men 97 came out with its first season, and it was, of course, insanely good. But I need it to be bigger. Anyway, trust and believe that I will be seated in that movie theater when these movies come out. And I will be seated in said movie theater with a huge pride flag. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you stuck around till the end, definitely let me know in the comments what you thought of the video. Remember to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I upload weekly videos, reactions, video essays, and next week we're going to be doing a long, very, very long video essay about a certain European cultural institution that is currently at risk because of a certain country using it to pinkwash its crimes. And also, said cultural institution has a very important event taking place this Saturday, the day that this video comes out. Wow, I wonder what it could be. Anyway, if you are excited for that, definitely let me know, and make sure to stick around till next week. And until then, I love you so much. Thank you so much for watching till the end. And yeah, take care. Bye.